Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my trusted colleague, Weston Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field, back in the saddle on short sleep, Wes. And unfortunately, we don't have an uplifting victory to try to perk up the proceedings here. A tough loss for the Packers on Monday Night Football at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. The final is 19-13 to the Las Vegas Raiders. And I know we can talk about the struggles on offense in the first half once again and all that. The bottom line in the NFL is when you have chances to win games, you got to go win them. And the Packers had two big-time opportunities to score in the fourth quarter of this game with first downs in Las Vegas territory. And both of those possessions ended with interceptions, and that's how the Raiders came out with the win.
Yeah, and last week you and I discussed, the Raiders only had one takeaway in the season. It had come a week earlier. But sometimes they do come in bunches, and in the Raiders' case, it definitely happened in this case. 3 interceptions for Jordan Love, 2 of those going to that same linebacker for the Raiders.
Robert
Spillane.
I think Spillane is how it's pronounced.
Yeah, that's a new one for me. But
I'm too tired to care right now.
I am as well. Frankly. And, the Packers just didn't make enough plays. And I think the most bizarre thing of this game was, and we'll talk about the full overall encompassing part of it, but the Packers checked so many boxes in terms of what you and I discussed last week as the keys to victory. Devontae Adams did not go off. I actually thought they did a really good job against Josh Jacobs outside of really one 24-yard carry that started one of their long scoring drives.
Yep.
Anders Carlson won the kicking battle against his brother. There were so many different parts to this, but Matt LaFleur talked about it afterwards. You mentioned it in the intro. When you lose the turnover differential the way Green Bay did to a team that was dead last in the NFL when it came to turnover margin, it's going to be hard to find a way to win. And for a team that did not have Aaron Jones again, in need of a guy to step up, Christian Watson made a couple nice plays, but in the end, it just wasn't enough, and Green Bay wasn't able to get that one final play they needed to be able to pull out a victory.
Yeah, that fourth quarter was certainly frustrating because, you look at Packers had earlier in the fourth quarter, right after the Raiders had taken the lead back at 17-13. I believe it was the opening play of the fourth quarter. They finished that 10-play touchdown drive. Packers came right back, had a first down at the Las Vegas 40-yard line. Plenty of time left on the clock. You're obviously looking to score a touchdown, or if you get a little bit further and can get a field goal, it's 17-16, and it's game on for the last 10 minutes or whatever the case might have been. But then the Packers take a sack. Then the next pass is forced a little bit into tight coverage, gets deflected for an interception. So you get a sack and a pick. Then late in the fourth quarter, after Daniel Carlson clanks the right upright from 52 yards, Josh McDaniels with an interesting decision there to try to kick the field goal to go up 7 as opposed to just go for it on 4th and 1, which would have essentially iced the game based on the clock and the timeouts. But the Packers get a break there. The elder Carlson hits the upright, so the Packers get great field position on the 42. You've got almost 2 full minutes on the clock. You've got a timeout. And they get a first down at the Las Vegas 35-yard line. Now, obviously, you need a touchdown because of that other missed opportunity. But then right when everything seems to be going in Green Bay's direction, you get a drop by Romeo Doubs, a tough drop by Luke Musgrave on a pass that, Love's trying to fit it in there with 2 defenders converging. So the pass is a little bit behind Musgrave, I think intentionally, but he gets his hands on it, can't hold on to it. So you have essentially 2 drops that then are followed by an interception in the end zone when he tries to take the shot to Watson, and Love says he underthrew it. Jordan Love stood at the podium and took his medicine. Hey, I got to protect the ball better, 3 interceptions. He has to be better in that area. But his teammates need to be better, Wes. The Packers had their chances in this game, and you can't put it all on the first-year starting quarterback. You can't be giving up a sack when you cross into opposing territory. You can't be dropping passes with less than 2 minutes to go. Packers have a lot of stuff to figure out on offense, particularly in the first half. With the 3 games in a row, the first half has been really a really big struggle on offense. But the Packers have a lot more issues right now than just the fact that Jordan Love threw 3 interceptions.
Yeah, and just trying to figure out a plan, with Max Crosby. He wasn't – how do I say this? because I don't want to be disrespectful to Max Crosby, but Max Crosby wasn't moving around as much as Aiden Hutchinson did, but then he comes on a stunt which basically goes around the Packers' entire offensive line.
Yeah.
And gets to the quarterback. I mean, things like that, you can't have it happen that way. And I just felt like when we talked at the beginning of the season, Mike, it was all about you got a young quarterback. You need everybody else to raise their game up to kind of take the pressure off of him. And that just hasn't happened lately. I mean, it's been a lot on Jordan Love to make things happen, to make plays. And when you try to force the play, you sometimes could force the takeaway. And this was one of those cases. I really like the plan coming out of the gate. It was very run-heavy based. There were some things about, the first 15 plays. Maybe a lot of that's scripted for Aaron Jones and you don't have him. But I thought A.J. Dillon really stepped up. Ran for 20 carries for 76 yards. Had that one series after the takeaway from Rudy Ford where he marches down the field basically kind of pulling the offense on his back, 34 yards on 6 carries. They get the touchdown, their only touchdown of the game. But when the Packers had to go the full distance of the field, trying to play error-free football for 10 plays, 12 plays, without a negative yardage play, without a penalty, proved really problematic for Green Bay. And when you go through a first half and it's just one touch for Christian Watson, nothing yet for Romeo Doubs, nothing really for Jaden Reed, it's tough to get the offensive rhythm going. It is funny, though, the fact that Green Bay was able to establish A.J. Dillon, I think, went a long way to that 77-yard completion to Christian Watson.
Absolutely.
The play-action play rolling across his body.
Yeah, busted coverage there by the Raiders, and Watson made the big play.
But in those explosive games, if you're going to have setbacks, you need to be able to counter with explosives, and that's really the only one Green Bay was really able to muster in this thing. And unfortunately, as you mentioned with the horse collar, ends up only being 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, that was a tough break because, as I mentioned in Insider Inbox when I was writing that on the plane in the wee hours flying back, that horse collar tackle inside the 10-yard line, the penalty only ends up being worth 3 yards. It's first and goal on the 3. You still got to be able to punch it in. That's a huge missed opportunity. 4 points off the board there when the Packers have to settle for a field goal. But clearly that's the punishment doesn't fit the crime there, right? I mean, that's a personal foul, but it only ends up being 3 yards, and essentially it's an illegal touchdown saving tackle that works in the Raiders' favor. There's nothing you can do about it. I mean, you can't rewrite the rule book on something like that, but it's just it's one of those things that went against the Packers. But you have to 3 games in a row, Wes. The first half, the Packers have just not been able to figure anything out on offense. I agree with you. I thought the game started, with the run heavy stuff. It looked like a lot of the straight ahead, more of the classic traditional running plays with A.J. Dillon were, grinding out some yards, moving the chains. There was looked like a breakdown or miscommunication on that third down play in Raiders territory that then led to the Packers' first punt. But I think Matt LaFleur thought, okay, the run, those early runs with A.J. Dillon, we're going to set some things up, we're going to open some things up, and then everything the Packers tried, they tried some end around or some more, unconventional or misdirection type of runs. Those weren't working. The play action wasn't really doing anything. Jordan Love made a really bad decision on his first interception. Didn't see the linebacker and threw it right to him. That gave the Raiders 3 points. Just nothing in the first half was working, and whether it's a matter of figuring out how guys like Aiden Hutchinson and Max Crosby are not going to, wreck your offense and not going to dictate how things go out there, or just finding something to hang your hat on to get the offense going, to get some sort of a rhythm established. 3 straight games with 0, 3, and 3 points, whatever order those were in the first half. That's just making life way too difficult for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, and it's not just a Jordan Love problem. It was an Aaron Rodgers problem, too. It's almost like after the Davante Adams era ended, there were so many times, Mike, especially in 3rd and short, you can go to Davante Adams. And everybody knew the ball was going to Davante Adams, but you could dial that up and you could find a way to keep moving the chains. Green Bay has kind of struggled to find that. And it doesn't matter if it's 3rd and short or 3rd and longer.
I agree.
Being able to get those opportunities, something you can go to. They've kind of teased it a little bit with some of the Luke Musgrave plays, but then like you mentioned later in the game, when you need that catch late, you're not able to come up with it. First quarter, I mean, I get it. 3 points now in the last 6 points in the last 3 first halves
Right.
For Green Bay. I didn't take a lot of issue with the first half, though. The first quarter. I thought the first quarter actually did set the tone. The problem for Green Bay in this one was that second quarter, because as you mentioned, you come out and you have the 3 and out. You have 3, a negative yardage play to Patrick Taylor, and you're not able to get anything going after that. And then the interception to Spillane. That is where That's where things started to tilt a little bit more. Green Bay's defense got thrown in some tough predicaments. They came up. I thought they responded. First time since 2018 that they've had back-to-back third down sacks to end the opposing offense's initial drives, first 2 initial drives. Rashawn Gary, I thought, continued to make an impact. I thought despite losing Quay Walker to the knee and Darnell Savage to the calf, the defense rallied between the pieces that were there. But it came down to those 2 longer series for the Raiders. And when the Packers were unable to match that and produce points off that, that's going to be the outcome in the game.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the defense a little bit too, because, if you had told me when we were talking about this last week, if you had said, all right, Mike, Josh Jacobs and Davante Adams are going to combine for less than 120 yards in this game, or I guess maybe it was a little more than that if you count Jacobs' receiving yards. But as far as Jacobs' rushing yards and Adams' receiving yards, I think it was 114.
Yeah,
was the total between the two. If you had told me that, I would have said, hey, the Packers should be in great shape here, right? And as you mentioned, it was really only one damaging play by each guy. The 24-yard run by Jacobs that started the long touchdown drive in the third quarter, the one that ended on the first play of the fourth quarter where the Raiders took the lead, as it turned out, for good. And then the 21-yard slant to Davante Adams where the Packers got caught in the bad matchup. Preston Smith is lined up across from him. If you're wondering how that happens, go and watch Matt LaFleur's press conference after the game. He was asked specifically about it. He said, hey, the Packers were able to do that to other teams as well with Davante Adams. It has to do with the defensive personnel, aligning Davante Adams in the slot. And then what happens is if the defense is not able to check out of a bad call, then the offense has something that they can take advantage of. And I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm speculating a little bit here. But if you want to try to check out of that call, not having either of your starting inside linebackers on the field makes that type of adjustment a lot harder. And the Packers got caught. Adams made the one really impactful play he was going to make that got them into the red zone, and then the Raiders were able to finish that drive.
If I can, I just want to mention one last thing.
Yeah.
For people, if you didn't have a chance to, you'll probably touch on that. Well, maybe, I don't know how we'll handle it in terms of our coverage, but if you go back and watch the play, the Packers got caught in one of their variants of their penny personnel. So you have 3 defensive linemen there. They used to toy with this package a little bit with Clay Matthews too back in the day, where you actually have the third 5-tech defensive lineman sort of playing the outside linebacker role. He had his hand in his dirt. I think it was Colby Wooden. I have to go back and look. But because of that, you only have one inside linebacker on the field, and you have your nickel personnel. Well, when the Raiders go spread and they go empty backfield and they have 5 receivers out, that means you now have 3 cornerbacks, Isaiah McDuffie as the inside linebacker, and then by proxy, Preston becomes the other slot cornerback.
Right.
It was just a tough situation Green Bay got caught into. I don't know what all goes into that. Do you need to get, how do you get Wilson over to the right side when Preston is the only one on that side with the leverage? Preston's not going to come across the formation to the other side. It was a really tricky situation Green Bay found themselves in. Yeah,
it's one of those things you've got to have an answer for it. You've got to be able to check out of it, and you've got to be able to do that quickly. And when the offense is able to scheme that up, they catch you in a bad matchup based on the personnel grouping that you have. I mean, that's it's an opportunity the Raiders were waiting for, and when they got it, they took advantage of it. I will say too, though, the defense you mentioned, they stood tall in some spots. Certainly after the first interception, a first and goal, I believe from the 7-yard line, the defense holds and the Raiders have to kick the field goal. Bottom line, and late in the game, yes, Carlson missed the field goal, but even if Carlson makes the field goal, it's still a 7-point game.
Yep.
And the offense is getting the ball back there with a chance to stay alive in the ball game. I thought, by and large, yes, the two long drives were frustrating. A 14-play touchdown drive, a 10-play touchdown drive. The Packers had their opportunities to get off the field on both of those drives. But at the end of the day, you hold a team in the NFL to 17 points. That's a game you expect to win. And as I mentioned in Insider Inbox, I think the biggest regret that comes out of this game, especially heading into the bye and all this time to stew about it and think about it, is the Packers wasted a game where the defense played well enough to get you a win. And that's not always going to happen in this league. But the defense played well enough to get the win, and the offense didn't do its part.
Well, Rasul Douglas talked about in the locker room afterwards. He said it almost felt like destiny that we were going to find a way to win this because we were getting the stops, and you just thought offensively they were going to find that one big play. It didn't quite happen, unfortunately, and it played out the way it did. But my overwhelming takeaway from this, when I was looking back at it and trying to reassess how everything went down, was, Green Bay was in a position once again to win this game. But unlike, you could say some of these other contests, like the Falcons one where you found a way to lose it late, the Packers just didn't find a way to win it. And for that reason, now they sit at 2-3 now entering the bye week.
Yeah, I mean, where you're at right now, they're really realistically 3 of the 5 games have come down to crunch time.
Yep.
And the Packers have come through in crunch time once, and they failed in crunch time twice. And that is why you're 2-3. That is why you're below 500 at the break, because what you do when the game is on the line is what matters more than anything else as far as the win-loss column. And the Packers, quite frankly, have the record they deserve.
And I will mention, because before we transition out of this, you do have to offer a tip of the cap to Jacoby Myers. I thought he had a really strong game in this thing. It wasn't about Devontae Adams, but Myers became the guy that sort of started moving the chains for them until Devontae made some of those bigger plays late. 7 catches, 75 yards. They were very opportunistic with their tight ends as well. Jimmy Garoppolo did what he does. He found ways to kind of chip away at this thing and ultimately put the Raiders in a position to win.
Yeah, unfortunately, 4 sacks by the defense, the 1 interception, a missed interception by Rasul Douglas that I'm sure he's going to regret for a while. Those, those all played a factor here, but the Packers are 2-3. A little bit of sponsor business here, Wes. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7. 365. And at Cousins Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousins Subs, 50 years of better. All right, this is our only show this week because of the bye, and we're going to try to take some time away from the office, plug in from home, recharge as best we can. So I want to talk a little bit about bigger picture and what's even coming up this weekend. The Detroit Lions are 4-1. They are now 2 games clear of everybody else in the division. And lo and behold, there is only one matchup in the NFL this coming weekend that pits 2 teams against each other with only 1 loss. And it is the Detroit Lions against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
That's going to be an interesting one. It's on the road. Detroit has to go down to Tampa. Tampa coming off of a bye, but I don't know if in Week 6 anybody would have circled Detroit and Tampa Bay as maybe the most intriguing game on the NFL schedule. But I think it's one a lot of people are going to have their eyes on.
Yeah, it will. And credit to the Lions. I mean, we talked about it, you and I, on Sunday. They did what they were supposed to do against a winless football team.
Yep.
They dictated terms, and I thought they just dominated. Jared Goff was exceptional. I thought David Montgomery, ever since coming back from the thigh injury, has looked really good. Just completely dominated, especially in the second half of that game. Tampa Bay is so scrappy, and they have weapons. Like, I think people kind of forgotten. I'm probably included in that.
Yeah, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin didn't go anywhere.
They're fine.
They're still there.
They're still there, and Baker Mayfield's using them. And it's funny because you can't even say, well, the running game isn't being that productive. It wasn't that productive last year with Leonard Fournette either.
No.
So, but defensively, they still have a really good nucleus there. I think that's going to be a really good test for Detroit's offense, seeing how they match up with a team of that caliber. But certainly, when you think about teams that weren't exactly expected to be front runners in the NFC, these have been probably 2 of the bigger surprises to varying degrees out of the gate so far this season.
And the other one with the Packers on their bye that the fans of the NFC North will be watching, Minnesota's at Chicago. Both teams are 1-4. So barring a 70-minute stalemate, as I like to say, one of these teams is going to be 1-5 and in last place by their lonesome in the NFC North. The Vikings gave the Chiefs all they could handle, took them right to the wire, and the Bears still trying to figure some things out, letting some opportunities get away.
Well, and now Justin Jefferson's on injured reserve, so I mean that's going to be an ultimate test here. You know, Kevin O'Connell talked about it. You have to maybe do things a little bit more unconventional on the Viking side of things, but that's a tough blow because, I mean, that is your MVP. That is your cornerstone of your offense. And if he's not available with this hamstring for at least 4 games, it's going to be a tough thing to overcome.
Yeah. I want to run one more thing past you, and I almost can't believe, me of it's the week-to-week league, right? I almost can't believe I'm going to ask you this, but it feels like I have to because Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers are both 5-0. It feels to me like it's going to take either a major upset in January or a significant change of fortune for somebody before January for these two teams not to meet again for the NFC title. And it's crazy to say that in the middle of October, but does it feel like that to you?
Boy, and they both reloaded, Mike. I mean, like, they're both better, I think, versions of themselves. I mean, DeAndre Swift has sort of found a new chapter of his career.
He looks like a completely different player in that Eagles offense, which is wild because we're seeing David Montgomery look almost like a completely different player in the Lions offense compared to, all of his, and I know some of it was health related, but all of his fits and starts with the Bears.
Yeah, because with the Bears, it almost seemed like he kind of was more gadgety. Like he could catch the ball, but he wasn't, like, between the tackles, he wasn't as productive. I've been really surprised by, I think, how well Swift has fit into the offense and how much they were able to just kind of regroup and build forward. I thought Jalen Hurts is coming off one of his better performances of the season. In San Francisco, what can you say, Mike, when you completely manhandle a team like Dallas that is expected to be one of the other front runners in the NFC?
Boy, that was the definition of a hitting on all cylinders game in every phase. I mean, and you don't see teams do that in early to mid-October, to put together a performance like that so early in the season. But that 49ers squad, man, they have a way of always getting up for the biggest games, and it was like they knew that was a big game. They were ready for it. I still am not convinced we've seen the best of the Philadelphia Eagles yet. I still think their arrow is kind of pointing up to wherever they're going to reach their peak. I don't think the 49ers anybody can play any better than they did on Sunday night against the Cowboys. I guess the question is, how long can they stay at that peak? There's going to be a valley at some point. There are just too many games to play. But both of those teams, it's hard not to like what you see out of those squads.
And as much as we talk about the Raiders getting Devontae, I mean, Philadelphia getting A.J. Brown could potentially go down as one of the biggest trades of this era of football. I mean, just it has been an absolute game changer for their passing game, and I think even in A.J. Brown's case it's taken him from being one of the best receivers to being now one of the truly elite.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that, we will call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted, and we will head into the bye week. As I mentioned, this will be the only show this week, but we will be back next week on our regular schedule. So be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team on Packers.com. For Wes, I am Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time.